Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 116. I'm waking up really early recently. I'm on a. It feels nice. It feels nice because I go to sleep early, and I wake up. I wake up early. I've been falling asleep at like 9 or 10 p.m. And it's never usually falling asleep for me, and I think a lot of people is just kind of trying to exhaust yourself and like force yourself to sleep. Recently I've been like tired, like I get tired around a certain time, and then I close my eyes and then I just fall asleep because it feels nice to close my eyes and drift to sleep, and it feels great. Like I've been being able to like recall my dreams recently, which I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but usually I don't recall my dreams. Last night had a dream. Okay, let me know if anyone else has had something like this. So my dad used to tell me when I was in high school. My dad would tell me that he used to have dreams, bad dreams, where he would get a call and it would be someone from his college. Again, years, decades after he'd already graduated. It would be someone from his college, and they would tell him that there was some kind of a mix-up where, for whatever reason, his degree doesn't count. They have to like revoke his degree because there was a mix-up and he didn't actually get enough credits for all of his classes to get his degree or something like that. So he has to go back to college, and that's like a like a stressful dream that I think he still gets to this day. Hasn't been in college in over 20 over 30 years at this point. I didn't start having those dreams until I graduated from high school, but for weirdly enough for me, it's never about high school. It's always that I have to go back to middle school. I don't know why, but it's always I have to go back to never even like elementary school. It's always specifically because I went to a K through 8, right? Well, I was there from the first to the 8th grade. That's splitting hairs, but it's never it's never like it was the same school, the same building, right? But it's never, when I have these dreams, it's never never the primary school, like part of my life. It's always going back to 5th through 8th grade with those teachers specifically in those classrooms, on that floor of the school. It's always that. And it's never even like a terrible thing. It's weird because it's not like a nightmare or something really stressful, because it's 7th grade. How it's not that hard. It's more just weirdly like I'm always like an observer. Like I'm just kind of watching these other like actual children go about their school days. I wonder if it's some kind of like self-reflection or something like that. Like it's a brain metaphor for observing myself and thinking about myself when I was in middle school or something like that. I have no idea. Usually they just end up being kind of annoying. I just wake up kind of annoyed from those dreams, but well rested. And what more can I ask for? Let me know if anyone out there has similar kinds of dreams where you have to go back to school or something like that. Specifically school. I think it's because it's such a stressful time. It's such a stressful time for so many people that, I don't know, it's like your brain kind of gets locked. It gets locked into these memories of the sights and sounds and the smells and what the halls look like and the teachers and the people and the feeling of waking up and going to school or something. Being in school and having been up for like an hour, like that very particular feeling. I get Silent Hill, I guess. It's like your own little Silent Hill. Yeah, I'm curious. I haven't really heard anyone else talk about that, but I get those. I wouldn't say frequently, but somewhat often enough that I remember them as a recurring thing in my life. And hey, no segue, but guess what? Guess what, guys? Uh, I finally started painting my 40K miniatures. That's right. I went out and I got so I was going to start on them, and then I realized, oh shit, there's a whole assembly process to the miniatures. So if you've never put together like a miniature kit from something like Games Workshop or a similar sort of tabletop miniatures game, they come on these sprues, these big sheets with all the individual pieces of the miniatures in them, and then you have to snip them out. Thankfully, the box set I got came with some clippers, which are actually really nice. Apparently, pretty high quality. So you got to clip all the pieces out for every individual Space Marine, in my case, and then you have to assemble them. And they kind of fit together in a sort of Lego-like way. They'll have these, like male and female ports, for lack of a better term. Like you just kind of you take the head, and the head has like a little tube coming out of it, little like pipe type thing, and then the torso chest part has a hole for that, and then you like just kind of fit it in. But they don't fit in naturally. You have to actually use some sort of an adhesive, like a glue, to get them to stay together. You have to assemble them such. I was not using glue because, at the recommendation of someone that I met at the game store way back when, just like a random a random customer, like a regular there the first time I went in, recommended that I use this thing called extra thin cement, which is not actually cement. It's a bit of a misleading. I don't know what the term for it would be. It's more like an acid, if anything, because it's not an adhesive. It's essentially this very thin, like literally thin, like clear mixture, this clear substance. And what it does is you dab it on the parts of the plastic, and it lightly melts them. It lightly melts the surface of the plastic, so that when they meet, when the two pieces meet, they fuse together after a few minutes. And it is much more. It's great, actually. I got it. What was the brand I got? I think it was Tamiya. Yeah, Tamiya extra thin cement. There's also, I believe, a version by AK Hobbies, and works fantastic. You just dab it on and then put it together, and then it's like maybe 2 or 3 minutes, because it's a very small surface area that I'm binding together. I guess that's what you'd call it, a binding agent. I don't know. Yeah, that stuff's great. It also smells really vinegary before it's set. And then I got to work yesterday. I had my first one assembled, and it was so cool to look at it just assembled. It was like, yo, I got a little Space Marine. And then I set about yesterday actually priming it and going through the whole painting process, because it actually turns out painting one miniature, not like a Herculean process. At least one of these little Space Marines that I'm painting up. And so I ended up, I finished the first one, and already I was like a little displeased with it. Well, I could see room for improvement. That's how I would say it. I'll say there was room for improvement, so I immediately set about doing a second one. And the second one, it was really cool, because I could feel immediate improvement, just with the level of comfort of handling the miniature, with the whole like assembly process. I mean, I felt like even just snipping the parts out, I felt like I got a lot better at it. Being able, just knowing like how far you can, how rough. It's kind of like building a computer. Like the first time you build a computer, it's like, oh, I want to be really careful with this, and then you kind of get into it and you realize about how rough you can be with all the components and stuff like that. And I feel like if I went about that a second time, if I made a second computer, if I built another one, it'd probably be a lot less take a lot less time. And similar thing here, just the familiarity with the process. Even having just done it once, I could feel some immediate improvement. Like, I learned a lot of stuff from doing the first one. So, for instance, here's one thing I learned. Hey, primer, turns out that horizontal strokes for applying brush-on primer, which I have, much better than vertical strokes. When I was doing I did vertical strokes for the first one because that just felt intuitive to me, and I ended up with a bunch of missing a bunch of spots all over the model that I had to then go back in with a smaller brush and patch up. With the second one, I just kind of I did way more just horizontal strokes left and right, and covered a ton more area way faster, way easier, and a much more cleanly applied coat. I think I want to say I did like 2 coats or something like that of it. Second one was still like a little bit sloppy and a little bit messy, but I had a better idea of how much to thin my paints. So I'd heard about thinning paints, and I was like, okay, I gotta thin all the paints. And what that ended up being for some of the smaller, for some like with the base coat, probably a good idea to thin it a decent amount. However, for like the layer paints and stuff like that, ended up kind of making a bit of a mess. Like I thinned it too much to the point where the paint was too thin and watery, and when I'm doing smaller, finer details like the trim on the shoulder pads or the shoulder plate armor that the Space Marines have got, when you're doing the trim on that, watered down way too much, and it just kind of ended up splotching everywhere and looking pretty messy. Second time I did it, I thinned much less and got a thinner brush, and then I applied it, and it way better looking, way more confined and restrained. I was actually able to paint on some like finer details, like little lines and stuff. And then once it was all done, so there's the most tedious part about it is the weighting process. The painting process itself is pretty interesting. The weighting is mainly like, because the weighting is all in like the boring parts. It's all in like, well, I gotta wait for the cement to dry, then I have to wait for I apply the primer, then I gotta wait like 5-ish minutes in between coats. If you do like 2 coats, I wait like 5 minutes for each one to dry. So there's already like 10-15 minutes of waiting that you're doing for the whole, for just to get started before you even really get into the actual painting process. And then I would have to do, just because of the particular paint I'm using for the base coat. When I went into the game store, they didn't have any kind of. I'm going for a silver color scheme. The base coat is going to be in silver, and they didn't have any Citadel paints, which is the Games Workshop brand. So I had to go with a different brand called AK, and they don't. So Games Workshop, the Citadel paints, they distinguish between different kinds of uses for the paints that they have. So there's individual base paints, layer paints, other things like contrast paints and washes and stuff like that. And those are all individually categorized. And if you don't know, the difference between them is essentially the thickness of the paint. So a base paint is going to be a lot thicker than a layer paint, because a layer paint is meant for more specific details. The base coat is like the primary color of the model. For instance, my guy's armor is mainly silver, so the base paint is just going to be a couple coats of silver. The base, and because it's the primary thing that other stuff is going to go on top of, it tends to be thicker. So AK, their paints, from what I can tell, don't have as much specialization. They're kind of like multi-purpose, which means that I had to use a few more coats of the base paint than I might have if it was a Citadel brand base paint. So yeah, I don't know. I'm rambling, but it was a fun process, and I can look back. I ended up cleaning out one of my shelves. You might notice it in like a later video or something. Like, I can look back and I can see my little guys. The 2 of them that I've painted so far, and the 3rd one that I assembled yesterday. And they're back there, and they're all cool and silver, and it's just cool. There's just something so cool about like putting something together, and then I don't know, like realizing it like it's mine, and it's very dumpy looking, but it's mine. It's really cool. So I look forward to doing the rest of them. The set that I got, the introductory kit, comes with 5 Marines and then like 10 Tyranids. Because, hey, Swarm Army. So I know that I have at least 5 chances to learn and make something cool looking. And I'm very, very happy with my progress so far. And I'm actually really excited to see, because I mean, the second time I started, the second one that I did, I wasn't even really, there were things that I wasn't even thinking about that I was just doing better, like applying the primer, just like little painting things. I had to really learn how to relax my muscles when painting, because man, they're small. They're smaller than my pinky finger, right? These minis. So when you're holding them, I'm just holding it by the base, because I don't have any kind of fancy holding thing to give me more stability. Man, you never realize how much your hands just naturally tremble until you're trying to do something very fine and closely detailed like that. But yeah, that was cool. That was fun, man. I can feel the excitement. I can feel the excitement welling up in me for doing more miniature painting. I'd recommend it. It's really fun. It's also like not super expensive. I mean, expensive is relative, but I mean, all the stuff that I got was maybe like a little over $100. The introductory kit's like $60. I had to get some primer, which is like another $10. The brushes that I got a big pack of brushes, which is very useful. Definitely have multiple brushes. The introductory set, it comes with a brush. You're gonna need multiple brushes. Also, did I get the cement? What else did I even get? I don't know. I was just using like just ripped up a piece of cardboard as a paint palette. Like, honestly, not super expensive. Maybe like $110, $120 at most dollars just to get started on it. Which, if you have a little bit of expendable income, hey, it's not that bad. I would recommend it. It was a lot of fun. Hey, you know what's not fun? I want to get this right out of the way. Is the recent Unity news. My notes just say Unity shitness. So this was a story that has really, really enraptured me, because for as long as I can remember, Unity has been the bastion, or maybe bastion's a little dramatic, but it's been one of the main kind of like leading names when it comes to, hey, any person can make a video game. You can go download Unity for free, learn all the coding stuff. They have a whole library of assets and things like that, and there's like guides for how to program games. Like Unity, I mean, I messed around with Unity when I was younger. And they have somehow managed to make the most, how would I describe it? The most kamikaze business decision I could ever imagine. So you might have heard about this, you might have not. You might not know what's going on with it. I've seen a few people who don't really get the whole thing, because this is a very game dev centered thing. So if you're not super tuned into like game dev talk stuff, you might have not really entirely caught this. So Unity the game engine, which is famous for having its own just kind of like free private use version that anyone can download to mess around with. An extremely flexible engine that can do a lot of things. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's a very, very powerful things can be made with Unity. It's not great for absolutely everything, but a lot of great games are made in Unity because it's so accessible to people. Well, they announced a couple days ago, earlier this week, and I was so glad that this happened after the last podcast went up, because there's been a lot of time for this story to develop, because they announced that they would be changing their terms of service. They would be adding, I believe starting next year, a fee to any game, a potential fee, I should say, to any game built in Unity, based off of how many installs the game gets. So, previously, before, Unity prided itself on being a zero royalty service. There is a professional package, which there's a variety of different pricing models for it, but that's just like I believe yearly subscription that you pay to Unity to use it professionally, which is like a fair, pretty decent, honest business model. Well, no, this new fee plan would introduce so basically Unity would charge a developer up to 20 cents per download if they exceeded a certain volume of downloads, which is kind of fucking crazy. Because mind you, it's like it's the most insane thing that you could come up with, because it's so close to being kind of reasonable, right? If it was a certain amount per purchase, that would make sense. And they might even do that. I'm pretty sure there might even be like actually no, they said no royalties. But if they wanted to say a certain amount per purchase, wouldn't be awesome, but it would still make sense, right? That's still like a business decision that makes sense. It's a little scummy to spring it on someone, but it makes sense. Per install? Hold up. So, you're telling me that I can buy a game one time, install it, they get charged, uninstall it, reinstall it, they get charged, uninstall it, reinstall it, they get charged. Are you telling me that with enough gumption, I can single-handedly bankrupt a developer by buying their game? The most nonsensical, to the point where, you know, there's that thing, the what is it? Is it Poe's Law? No, that's not Poe's Law. Hanlon's razor. Never attribute to malice what could just as easily be explained with incompetence, right? So that's oftentimes my first instinct is, okay, maybe they're just really stupid. This is so stupid that, number one, it's so stupid that it feels, it's hard to believe that you could make a decision this bad. And it's hard to believe that a company as big as Unity could have what I imagine is so many people on its payroll. Like, you realize that companies hire people to prevent stuff like this from happening. Like, they hire, I have to mute a fucking Discord server right now. They hire people to advise them on things that may or may not make sense. For instance, if we introduce out of nowhere a fee for our developers that makes absolutely no sense, is that going to alienate 90% of our clients? Yes, maybe we shouldn't do it then. And now, their defense of this is that this would only affect 10% of their user base. That being developers, right? People making games. That is cherry-picked at best and very misleading at worst, because 10%, let's take it in face value and say that that's actually true, that only 10% of users would be affected by it, which I can actually believe because it said it's over a certain threshold. They didn't say what threshold it was because they have reserved the right to be completely opaque about this. So, developers, that 10% of developers, so it's kind of like when YouTube said that they were removing community annotations, or sorry, just annotations in general, because, quote, only like 5 or 10% of the YouTube user base even use those features. And it was like, yes, YouTube, because only 10% of the user base actually makes videos. And only a certain amount of people who make videos are going to be using annotations. It's an extremely useful feature for the people who do use it, who create the bulk of value on the site, the users who actually make videos. But you can look at data and say that most people aren't using it, so it's like some luxury sports car manufacturer saying that they're going to stop making cars because most people don't buy them. Yeah, that's the point. The point is that most people don't buy them. In any event, that's what this statement is an echo of. And even having said that, it's actually even more stupid. It makes even less sense because, mind you, we're talking about video games. I've said this before, video games are one of the only entertainment industries, where it is actually very common for small indie productions to become as big, if not bigger, as big budget AAA titles. We are in a very interesting industry where that's something that happens kind of regularly. Not out of the question. And in cases like that, the barrier or the line between personal use and professional use can get a little blurry. Trust me, as someone who's downloaded Adobe Premiere presets that say personal use only for videos that I make for my job, the line can get blurry really fast, guys. Ooh, I'm such a devious little bad boy. I downloaded sound effects meant for personal use and used it in a video that I can indirectly make money from Patreon. Ooh, it's like a legal gray area. Ooh, yummy nummy. A case in point for a why this idea that, well, it's only going to be affecting really successful developers, why that doesn't really make a lot of sense. A game that, if you're a regular listener of this podcast, you've absolutely heard me go on and on and on about. You're very familiar with me talking about, at the very least. Vampire Survivors. Vampire Survivors was a game made by an Italian gentleman named Ponsel. It's either Ponsel or Poncol, or maybe Ponclé. But Ponsel always made sense to me in my head. Who basically just made this game in his spare time as a hobby, invested about $1,000 of his money into it, which is, it's a hobby thing. It's reasonable to invest some money into a hobby, especially if you're really enjoying it and whatever. So he invested about $1,000 into it, and he decided to throw it up on Steam for $3 per purchase. Just a flat $3 fee, price tag, and with the idea being that, well, maybe in a few years it'll eventually pay itself off. I'll make the money back that I spent on it, and maybe a little more, and I'll have this little thing from sales of my this little game that I made. Well, a lot more happened than that. It made its money back, plus some. It became one of the biggest games on Steam, on Twitch, on YouTube for a little while, at least a couple weeks, and has had a continued success. Every single DLC they put out, it's getting a fucking cartoon, like an animated series about it. With, I think, one of the guys from John Wick, like, successful beyond his wildest dreams. Like this tiny, humble little game that was inspired by a mobile game that he thought was neat, that he assumed no one would play. Oh, now it's his job. He quit his job to go work on Vampire Survivors. That is the kind of developer that this fee change would hurt, could easily stunt the growth of. Saying that it only affects a small minority of very successful developers is kind of a misnomer, and I don't think it's a great argument. This story gets a little more, how do I say, a little more complicated, because the backlash to this decision was huge, and it was immediate. There were a number of developers, indie and small scale devs who had a lot to say about it. A lot of cyberpunk text on colored background public statements. There were, like, honestly too many to count. There was the Cult of the Lamb people. There was a lot of people with developers of games that you have heard of, openly decrying this, and with some of them threatening to potentially delist their games. You can rest assured that any future projects they made will not be using Unity, even if this change gets pulled back, right? And that's the thing. Even if this gets completely rolled back and the whole idea gets scrapped, no one is going to use Unity after this. Maybe some people will who don't know, but there's going to be a permanent, huge stain, at least I'd hope so, because they deserve it for this, on their reputation. And if you are looking to get into game development, I would just personally highly caution you against using Unity. Their CEO is a man by the name of John Riccatello, who is it racist to say that sounds like a mafioso name? Who was formerly at Electronic Arts as their CEO until 2004. Let's see. Oh, great. He has a section on his Wikipedia page called Litigation. On June 5th, 2019, Ann Evans, former vice president in human resources for Unity Technologies, recent, filed a sexual harassment and wrongful termination lawsuit against the company, stating that Riccatello sexually harassed her. All right. In September, the Superior Court of California issued a court order granting Unity's motion to compel arbitration and stay all proceedings. Oh, they just muscled her out. So John Riccatello, a former EA guy, 2004 EA guy. Ooh, that was like the slip. From 97 to 2004, that was the slip. Apparently once suggested that when Battlefield 3 was coming out, that they should charge players to reload their guns, because if you hook them in with the game, what they won't mind paying extra for doing a task as trivial as reloading their gun, which was like, that wasn't a joke. You can look this up. That was a real thing he said. That's the kind of guy running Unity. So actually, this isn't surprising at all. To further complicate things, after this huge controversy, why does nobody know the year he was born? Why does Wikipedia say 1957 or 1958? Was he a mystery? Was he a mystery man? What? Anyway, there was going to be some kind of Unity, I think they were going to call it a town hall meeting, which ended up getting canceled and their offices closed down because of a, quote, credible death threat. So you read that and you're like, oh boy, you know, death threat's not good, but does it surprise me? No. And you know what's even weirder? It turns out, and this is known because of police involvement in the death threat. It came from a Unity employee, which is kind of bizarre. I would sort of expect it to be someone who was more affected by the change, like a developer or something. But I guess this was it even related? Was it someone who was it somebody who was just really peeved that their company was destroying itself with this horrible business decision? I don't know, but it is a weird wrinkle to the story. Over the last day or two, the situation has slightly calmed down, and I think we're going to be waiting on some more news. Now, what I hope this is not is I hope that this isn't I'm not sure if there's a good allegory for this kind of a thing, but it's a thing that people will do where they suggest something real, haggling. Let's call it haggling. They'll suggest something kind of outrageous, right? Like this stupid fee. And then when that gets pushed back, when that gets a bunch of backlash, which they anticipated it getting, they back down from it. Everyone says, okay, the day is saved. And then they introduce the thing that they actually wanted, which is still bad, but not as insane. And then the needle gets pushed a little further because everyone has the comparison point. Well, it's not as bad as when they tried to do that other thing. And I hope against hope that this is not one of those situations. I hope nothing bad happens, because I think that having something like Unity is really good for a lot of people. And I feel genuinely really bad for developers who are too deep into developing a game on Unity, who have sunk a lot of time and effort into it, that now they have to be scared of their own success. One of the most baffling light yourself on fire decisions I could imagine. Also, apparently, I think he sold 3,000 shares a couple days before the announcement went up. So there's that. There's that. I wonder if he's going to jump ship from the company soon. You want to take bets on that? You want to take bets that he's going to jump ship? I don't know what I'd bet. But, yeah. That's my thoughts. Just, oh man, such a stressful situation to be in if you're affected by that. My heart goes out to people who have put a lot of time and effort into something that they care about, for this to get dropped on them. It really sucks. And I guess it's, is it another reason to promote open source software? That would be nice. That's a nice thing about FOSS. In any event, let's talk about, that's probably some of the worst news that we're going to go over today. You want to go over some kinder news. There was a Nintendo Direct. Now, I am not a Nintendo guy. I don't own a Switch. I am not particularly into Nintendo properties. So why am I talking about the Nintendo Direct? Well, it wasn't really a Direct that was meant for me. It was a Direct... This was really a Direct for my girlfriend. This had a number of things that Kat was fucking stoked about. So, first of all, I guess the things that kind of interest me. Let's see, where was it? There's a remake of Contra, which is interesting, or it's called, they're calling it a reimagining. It looks like there's some additional playable characters and stuff. That's cool. It's Contra. This will be one of those kind of minor, I don't know, like Bionic Commando reboot type of games, I imagine. It'll probably be good. It's way forward. Trombone Champ is going to the Switch, which is fun. Tomb Raider. The first 3 Tomb Raider games are getting a remaster. That's neat. I like that. Yada, yada, yada. F-Zero 99. Hey, you guys know I love my Mode 7. This was a little unexpected. I saw there was some kind of leak about how, there's gonna be F-Zero news at the Direct, and then it was like, no, there isn't. There's gonna be it's gonna get like a virtual console release or something like that. Maybe a collection. This is excuse me. Interesting. It's different. Historically, the reason that F-Zero hasn't come back is because they don't know how to differentiate it from Mario Kart. Which kind of weird, right? It's kind of weird that they made... Which one came out first? F-Zero release date. 1990, November 1990. Let's see, Super Mario Kart release date. 1992. So you made an F-Zero game, and you're like, wow, we have like a racing series now. And then like 2 years later, you just make a successor to that, except with brand recognition. Just completely shoving the previous new IP out of the water. Like imagine if like a year before Smash Brothers, they made a completely unrelated new IP that was the same style of game. And then, Smash, like, which one do you think is gonna last longer? So yeah, kind of a shame. Kind of a shame for F-Zero, and that's always just been its pain point, is that they never knew how to differentiate it from Mario Kart. Well, this is kind of an interesting way to differentiate it from Mario Kart with F-Zero 99, which, if you didn't hear, is the same as Mario... What was it? It wasn't Mario 99, but it was Mario 64. No, like Mario 32 or 35, something like that. And Tetris 99, where you take a game, an existing game, and then you kind of reimagine it as a battle royale thing where it's actually a competitive deal. It reminds me of those like Tetris and the Mario one. This F-Zero one's a little more direct because it's more like car combat. Because you're actually like bumper to bumper with the other players. The first two remind me a lot of those competitive shmups. Like, which Toho game is it? Toho 9, I think? Which is just randomly like a competitive versus game. It's like each player is playing like a Toho game separately on their own sides of the screen. And then doing well on your game will like send enemies and stuff to the opponents. Like it's a fun concept. It's a fun idea. Puyo Puyo Tetris, I guess, is also kind of fits that mold. Very, very similar idea. Or Super Gem Fighter or Puzzle Fighter. I forget which one is the actual puzzle game and not the fighting game. So yeah, F-Zero 99, that's neat. A lot of ports and remasters, ports of old DS games, 3DS games. You got Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, some game I've never heard of called Trace Memory, and Another Code is getting like a remake. Sure, cool. Mario vs. Donkey Kong, the actually very cool looking Game Boy game, getting a remaster. Or a full remake. Paper Mario Thousand Year Door also getting a remake. So this is very much like the Switch is winding down. They're just trying to round out their library with some things that are like not super high budget, like AAA things, but you know, I mean, when you're remaking a game, a lot of the groundwork in terms of design it's already done. It's mainly, you're kind of taking out a large chunk of development because that's already been taken care of for you. And instead you can focus on, you know, remaking assets, levels and all that, sound effects and music. Of the new games, this is really where it went into Katrina mode. So first of all, Princess Peach Showtime. Now, Kat loves Peach. She's a theater major, and she does cosplay. So when there's a Princess Peach game where that's theater actor themed, and she puts on different quote unquote Barbie-like cosplays. I think we said that like this is her Black Panther. This is a game tailor-made for her. But hey, it's fun to get a solo Peach game. The only other one that really exists is Super Princess Peach on the DS. So hey, it's fun to get one of these. And then the other one is Spy Anya Operation Memories. Kat also loves Spy Family. We watched the whole thing. And you might remember talking about that. And the funny thing about this one is they're not selling you. I watched the trailer. I don't know what this game is in terms of its gameplay. Like what the actual, like what do you do? For the best I can pull together is that the gameplay consists of maybe some mini games and like life simulator aspects or something like that. This is not a game that's trying to sell you on its gameplay. It's a game that's trying to sell you on its vibes, on its tone. It's essentially an Anya simulator where Anya wants to make a scrapbook of memories, and so you do cute, wholesome things, and I assume do little mini games and stuff to make memories. It looks very cute and relaxed. And like that part of Spy Family. It's very much that part of Spy Family. Looks cute. Other than that, the direct didn't really have that much else. There was a new Vanillaware game. I've never been into Vanillaware games. Not because I don't like them, because I've just never played one. Some people were happy about that. New Saga game. I don't know shit about Saga. It's WarioWare. It's another WarioWare. More fucking DLC for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Can you believe this game came out in 2014? It's been out for almost 10 years. When are they gonna make another one? Jeez, they have been milking this game for so long. Oh, it has evil Luigi in the thumbnail for the trailer. That's funny. He's in the background. Anything else? No, nothing else that I care to mention. That was it. That was Nintendo. The more like the throw it in the bin Tendo. Speaking of Katrina, we watched Hotel for Dogs. That came out in a weird way. I went over to her house and we watched Hotel for Dogs. We actually got a double feature of the Nickelodeon marathon because we were gonna watch HFD, as the fandom typically calls it, and then ended up watching Pulp Fiction. The fuck is wrong with us? Am I right? So we got around to watching it, and this is so weird because we're doing all of the theatrically released Nickelodeon movies, right? I can't imagine this movie coming out in theaters. It doesn't feel like a movie for theaters. It feels halfway between a theater film, that makes sense, like a theatrically released film, and a made-for-TV movie. Like, it's a little too high budget for TV, but it's also just a little too scrawny for a theatrical release, if that makes sense. Do you care about Hotel for Dogs? Should I explain it? Hotel for Dogs is a movie about these two orphans, one of which I was like, who's that kid? Who is that kid? He plays the little brother in Wizards of Waverly Place. That was totally who he is. They're these two orphans. They're going through foster care, and they're currently living with a foster family, which is, one of them is Ethan Hawke is the dad. So we started joking that this is like the prequel. This movie is 2009, so we were joking this is the prequel to Before Midnight. Which is really funny. And that the fucking Wizards of Waverly Place kid, the younger brother, is like supposed to be his son in Before Midnight. Before, so what the fuck we called it, like Before Gaiden or something. But no, they're living with this foster parents who are like, they're so weird the way that they're handled, because they're supposed to be, it feels like this weird clashing element, because the parents are supposed to be this kind of like mildly oppressive, like they're not, like the kids don't like them. I forget what their names are, it doesn't matter. The kids don't like them. They're these mildly oppressive, kind of like restrictive parents, and they don't know how to cook food, so they eat like gray slop. And they just hate them because they don't like their food, and they find them annoying, because that's the other thing, is that they're musicians. It's really strange because they're like these kind of, they act like these, their whole deal is being these almost like new agey type hippie rocker musicians, but also they're like very oppressive, I guess, and strict, and it's just kind of weird. It really doesn't, I don't really get like what's the problem with them, and it just kind of ends up feeling like the kids just sort of, I don't know, they just sort of end up seeming kind of like ungrateful. I don't know, like there's nothing particularly really, it's so strange because the kids hate them. It feels like the audience is supposed to hate them, because there's multiple points in the movie where they're like, they're made fools of, right? Where like they drop into a dumpster and stuff like that. But it's like they never really do anything that bad. They aren't actually that hateable. They're maybe a little bit annoying. Well, anyway, they're living in New York with these foster parents, and they have a dog, and the dog like runs away one day, and then the dog goes to like this abandoned hotel, this like decommissioned hotel, which I don't know who owns it. It just, I don't know, it's just falling apart. And there's these two other dogs, and the kids are like, oh, let's take care of these dogs. And the whole movie is them making a hotel for dogs. That's the premise, is they like dogs, and they don't want them to get euthanized by animal control. So they take in stray dogs, they retrofit this hotel with all sorts of little gadgetry and things for the dogs to amuse themselves with, and they like potty train them. They come up with like automatic systems to feed them food. There is like a fun element to this film. There's a fun kind of like Rube Goldberg machine kind of element to it, with some of the little kind of analog, almost steampunky sort of inventions that the kids come up with. They end up roping in these two other kids into their operation. One girl, just because she shows up and she likes dogs, because she works. Oh no, it's the two people, these two teenagers their age who work at the pet store, because the sister has a crush on him, and then the girl, she just kind of shows up, and she's like, yep, I'm gonna be in the plot now. And then this third guy comes in, or this other guy comes in, this other kid, and he's just there because he wants to fuck. That is his stated purpose, is that he's really into either the sister or the other girl. And we kept joking because the other girl's black, so we kept making jokes about him being him like fucking every scene he tries to hit on her, we were waiting for him to drop some kind of really fucking like, hello my my chocolate dessert, my Nubian queen. He has that kind of energy. Like if this movie was any edgier, he would have been making those advances. And she is not receptive at all to it. What the fuck even happened? I don't know. It's just kind of a series of things happening. It's not a very interesting movie. Most of it goes by in a blur. There's a little bit of back and forth. The conflict arises eventually when, well, there's a couple things. So number one is that they tell. So they're not like supposed to be in this building, right? Because it's decommissioned. They could get potentially arrested for trespassing, and then all the dogs would probably get taken away and euthanized, which is pretty dark for a kids movie, but whatever. They can handle it. It's just like, we're gonna fucking shoot the dog. It's very intense for a kind of dumb movie. So there's that threat, and then there's also the fact that the girl told her crush, the guy from the pet store, that they like live there or something, and that their parents own the building, and that they're just on holiday for some reason. I don't know why she felt the need to lie. Is he just like a narc or something like that? And they go through like this entire plot, getting pretty close as friends, or maybe more. And then they're at like this party, and this guy, they meet this guy who happens to live in the same building as them, like the same actual apartment building. And he's like, oh yeah, no, you live with so-and-so, and yeah, I also live in so-and-so apartment building. And pet store guy's like, what? Are you lying to me about living in that old shitty falling apart hotel? I thought you just slept there all the time in the basement on the concrete. What else are you hiding from me? And it's like, oh, are we fucking doing this? This is so lame. All right. You lied to me. No one has a New York accent in this movie. That's disappointing. They're like, oh, hey, I'm dog walking here. No one says that. They don't say that one single time in the movie. Huge missed opportunity. And then what? Oh yeah, they get found out because of a. Oh yeah, so in order to make these little contraptions, they just like steal a bunch of shit. They gloss over it. Like they never explain where they're getting all of these little pieces and components and little household appliances. I assume they just found them around the hotel because there's a bunch of just crap mattered all over the place. Like in every shot, it's just, there's a bunch of stuff that's just lying around. So I kind of figured it was either that or stuff they would find in, alleyways, stuff that had been thrown out. That's what I had always assumed. And then they reveal that at least some of the stuff has been things that they were stealing from their foster parents. And the dad, they find this out. They find the kid the brother trying to like sneak like a hairdryer. Like a hairdryer. You need they need, what the fuck? You're gonna steal my hairdryer? The out of the house, and they're like, what the fuck are you doing? What the fuck? And like, it's crazy because it's framed as like a bad thing that they're found out, but no, that's like, I would be upset. I would be furious. What the you're stealing from me? What are you doing? Because they already have they're already like scam artists. When the movie starts, they're like con artists. They have this stupid plot where they get like a phone box and they put a rock in it and then like reseal it, like put new plastic sealing over it and like seal it with like a heat or something. And then they sell it to some guy who's like a secondhand phone kind of shop. And then they get arrested because they sold him a rock. They like scammed him. They're kind of pieces of shit. And for like no conceivable reason. They aren't like doing this because they're low on money or they're poor or they're homeless or anything. They just scam people for no reason. Like, they're kind of assholes. And them being found out is framed as like, oh no, this is so terrible. What about the hotel for dogs? This whole movie, we just kept like, anytime they used the word hotel, we would be like, a hotel for dogs. We were waiting for them to say the name of the title, and it would just never come. It just never came. We were building it up so much. And then, what else happens in this movie? I don't know, like, climax stuff happens. Oh, it culminates in, so they get found out because the parents, like, chase them to the hotel for some reason, or something like that. Something happens, everyone gets found out, all the dogs get taken to the pound, they're gonna get euthanized. They do a dog heist. They take all the dogs from out of the pound, which is like mondo illegal. Like trespassing. I'm pretty sure there's like at least one case of assault in there. You can't just release a bunch of potentially rabid dogs out into the fucking streets, which is exactly what they do, and they bring them back to the hotel. Naturally, all of the police and animal control are like storming in. And for some reason, like a bunch of just random passersby, like a bunch of citizens of New York, and there's just a big crowd of people in the main entry of this hotel, like the big opening, the lobby. And then for some guy, okay, I forgot to talk about Don Cheadle. Don Cheadle is their like social worker guy. He's their social worker, and he's trying to get them into a new home and stuff like that. And he shows up a few times throughout the movie. And he's like, these kids are so good, even though they're piece of shit scam artists. These kids, they're good they got good hearts. And he like went to the hotel after. Oh yeah, because they got whatever happened, and then in the middle of this like second act low point, he went and they ended up getting disowned by their foster parents, which like rightfully so. What the fuck? And then they were in these separate foster homes. It's like, oh no, we're split up for 2 minutes of the movie. Don Cheadle goes to the hotel. He finds the guest book that they made with all the dogs in it. And he's like, these kids really care about dogs. And so now at the end of the movie, everyone's all crowded around in the lobby. Don Cheadle comes out holding, like he's fucking Moses, holding the tomes, the stone tablets, and he starts reading off the names of the dogs like he's casting spells, and everyone's looking at him, and the dogs come out, and he's like, they've written that down, like all the different detail, like this dog was found chained up in a yard, abandoned by its owners and stuff like that. And then there's all these dogs that come out, and he's just, and then he's convincing them, and it's. I described this as kids movie stuff is happening, because we were like, what is happening? And I said, kids movie stuff is happening. Everyone stops to listen to Don Cheadle, and the cops are like, well, I guess we could hear him out. When in reality, they just shoot him because he's holding a book of spells and he's summoning animals from the ether. And he starts reading these all out until there's just all the dogs are by his side. There's like 50 dogs around him on the steps of this lobby. And he says that's why they made this, and it cuts to a wide shot of him with like 100 dogs holding the ancient tome, the Book of Spells, and he says this, a hotel for dogs, and we popped off so hard. We that's like the loudest we've screamed together watching a movie. Yeah! A hotel for dogs. And then him saying that makes everyone cheer, and then the cops go, well, I guess there's nothing we can do, because kids movie stuff is happening. And then, crazy, Don Cheadle adopts them, which I was, as soon as he showed back up, I was like, oh, he's gonna adopt them. That's how it's gonna end up. He's gonna adopt them. They turn the hotel into like a real business. At the end, a hotel for logs. More, am I right? Is it forgettable? I don't know. There's fun interest. There's mildly fun. It's a great 6 out of 10. It is extremely average, and then occasionally does something slightly interesting or unintentionally funny. Usually the latter, which bumps it up to a 6 out of 10 for me. I am not a movie rater scale guy, but that's what I. Sometimes it's such a simple film that there's no need for nuance. Yeah, it's fine. You know what movie is a lot better than Hotel for Dogs? A Series of Unfortunate Events. So we spun the wheel again and we landed on this movie. And so if you don't know about A Series of Unfortunate Events, Kat had never watched this. She owned the first book. I had owned the 7th book when I was a kid, and I really liked it. If you don't know what it is, A Series of Unfortunate Events is a book series by a guy named Lemony Snicket. That's not his real name. And it's about these orphans, these 3 orphans, the Baudelaire children. Violet, the oldest daughter, Klaus, the middle brother, and then Sunny, the youngest daughter. And she's like a toddler. She's like a little baby. And their parents, they are the children of these very wealthy, extremely wealthy, that's important to the plot, parents who are like these kind of eccentric, sort of implied to be adventurers, or there's a lot of mystique surrounding their parents' true business and all that. Well, their parents die in a house fire, and they are put into another movie about orphans. Funny enough, they are put into not the foster care system, but they are basically sent off to live with their closest relatives. And the books are basically about, every single one of them is them going off to a different relative, all of whom none of whom they seem to be actually related to. And they get there, and, well, a series of unfortunate events happen. The books are they're very fun. They're very quirky and how would I describe it? I think so. At one point in the film, I very early, like 5 minutes in, I paused it, and and to give Kat a little bit of reference, I said, it's like Roald Dahl for goth people. I might refine that to, it's like Roald Dahl for MCR kids, and she was really into it. Kat really liked this movie. From what I remember of the seventh book, so I don't think you necessarily need to like read all of them. Like I read the seventh one, and I really wasn't confused at all. I remember as being as a kid. They're very whimsical, but kind of like dark and sort of gothic in that way. Kind of like a Tim Burton-esque, I would describe it as. And the film, I feel, captures that pretty well. I never read the first... So this movie it's technically adapting the first 3 books, I believe. I haven't read those, but just going off of like my knowledge from reading one of the books years ago when I was a child, and then actually I've watched this movie before, again when I was a kid. I think that it does a pretty decent job at capturing the spirit of the books. I remember Lemony Snicket has a very memorable writing style. It's all told as if it's kind of epistolary, where it's technically supposed to be Lemony Snicket is writing. Maybe epistolary isn't exactly the right word, but Lemony Snicket is writing about the Baudelaire children. It's kind of framed as a biographical tale. He is recounting the story of their lives and their misadventures across all of these different books. And his narration is very quirky. It throws in a lot of just very like fun ways of distributing information. It's very playful. I'd call it very playful, with a bit of a slightly dark sense of humor, a little bit morose. Never like down or dreary or necessarily bleak. It's a bleak world, but a kind of whimsical, fun perspective on it, which I think it lends it a very unique kind of tone that is pretty fun. And the film does a good job of capturing that. So for one, because the narration is, I think, very integral to the feeling of the books, they include it in the movie. There is a somewhat of a framing device, which is Lemony Snicket is writing at his typewriter about these stories. And there's a few points where they sort of not break the fourth wall, because that's not really what it is, but they sort of play with that, where at like certain points he'll something shocking will happen, and like right before something like seemingly really bad happens, his like typewriter will jam. And there's a momentary gag, and then they cut back to reveal that it actually wasn't anything bad at all, and it's just holding out on this tense moment to kind of mess with the audience a little bit, which is fun. It's a highly stylized movie. It reminds me a lot of this era of Tim Burton films, like the Tim Burton Willy Wonka. What year exactly was this? Series of Unfortunate Events movie. 2004. Yeah, that fits right in. And when was the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? Was the very next year. Yeah. So it's funny that she predates it. It fits in that kind of like, it's very like CG. The colors are highly stylized. A lot of things are very bleak and desaturated, kind of tending towards blue. A lot of like heavy contrast, black and white. The lighting is very harsh in some scenes, with just kind of like completely blown out shafts of light peering through walls and windows and things like that. The sky is always overcast. It's a very gray movie. And that's contrasted with some kind of silly, goofy characters, namely Jim Carrey. Very, very quickly. Because I was to finish my thought about it. It's highly stylized and it feels very CG and digitally altered, but I think it works because of the tone of the movie specifically. Because the tone feels a little bit unreal, and it's kind of in this it's in this the setting of the film is pretty curious, or of the books, because it's like, I don't know if it takes place in any set time period. I don't think they ever say. But it's this sort of floating around vaguely... It feels kind of like UK or European 20th century. There's like cobble streets. Very Victorian architecture. It takes place in like goth world. It takes place in Tim Burton goth land. And so the world's already feeling kind of unreal. Like the whatever digital green screening there was, honestly never really took me that much out of it, because that's kind of what the whole movie feels like. It always feels a little bit off. All the characters act a little bit strange. Actually, the only characters who are kind of like normal, reasonable people are the Baudelaire children, which is kind of fun. It's sort of got it sort of has a Berserk thing going on. It's like sort of a weird analogy to make. There's this running thing in Berserk where all of the adults in the world are like horrible, corrupt monsters, and the children, the pure children, are the only ones, or the very few, who are able to see through that and see things truthfully and with goodness. And there's kind of a similar thing here where the Baudelaire kids are very upfront about what's happening. I should get into the plot. So, again, it's adapting the first 3 books, and I don't think entirely directly. It's sort of mishmashing them together into three big chunks of the film. 3-ish big chunks. With like a 4th half-sized for the climax, if that makes sense. So initially they go after their Count Olaf, who is played by Jim Carrey, who kind of steals the show. This is a good Jim Carrey performance. You're always worried when he's doing it that he's going to push it too hard. And he's really good at finding the balance where he's never really going too much. You might not like it as a matter of taste, but personally, and I think for most people, he tends not to go too extreme with the goofiness, the silly faces, the voices, the exaggerated movements and body language. He kind of knows how to time it so that it works. It's funny because it's very bold and out there, right? It's very... I almost said bold and brash, and I didn't want to say that because then it would belong in the trash. But it's this very out there style that seems... It almost seems easy, but when you see someone trying to imitate a Jim Carrey style of goofiness, man, it's easy to mess up. Man, it's easy to just come off as super annoying or obnoxious or really embarrassing. But he pulls it together. He manages to figure it out. And he is very much playing a Jim Carrey character in a villainous role, which is fun for Jim Carrey. He plays their Count uncle, mildly, I think. I don't think he's actually technically related to them. Or he plays Count Olaf, who is the first relative that they're sent off to live with. And he is this theater actor who is this tall, gaunt, man who lives in this dilapidated house that's just full of filth and dirty dishes and stuff like that, and it's completely falling apart. And then I don't know, it's a bit hard to talk about the movie, but they eventually do, spoilers, they eventually do get away from him and to a different guardian. Yeah, guardian is what it's the term. The conflict, the scheme of the movie, Olaf's scheme, is that he's trying to get their inheritance money. He wants the Baudelaires' inheritance money from their parents. Now that means that he has to become their legal guardian, and then they have to die. So when I talk about like kind of like a dark, bleak, kind of messed up world, right? The central conceit of the film is that there's an adult who is relentlessly trying to kill these 3 innocent children. And immediately they don't like him. But as soon as that becomes apparent, they're like, this fucker, like, we have to get rid of him somehow. And spoiler alert, he recurs. He is a constant thing throughout the film after technically his segment is over of them living with him. And that results in them living with a number of different parents. And every single one is like, there's a really good job done of making each one very quirky. There's their Monty, like Uncle Monty, whose name is like I think his name is literally Montgomery. Who loves reptiles and stuff like that, and his whole house. The set design is great in this movie. They have this great atmosphere, very very exaggerated in this very indulgent kind of gothic style, but never really feels like it's always shot in a way where it never feels like it's the scenery is chewing the actors, so to speak. It just kind of this very careful set design where everything there's lots of little details and stuff like that all around, but it's shot in such a way where the actors. Am I just going to repeat myself again? You get what I said. And I guess, should I talk about the Baudelaires? Your Baudelaires. It sounds like the name of some kind of like French champagne or dessert or something like that. Your Baudelaires, madam. So the oldest one, Violet, is like she's like an inventor. She invents things. Klaus is this avid reader who has all of this random knowledge of stuff, and their little sister Sunny she just bites shit. She just bites things. That's her thing. She's the muncher, and she cannot speak. She can only munch. So they're these very, I don't know, they become pretty likable in the sense that they're the only ones who really understand what's going on, which is the irony. So like, spoilers, I guess. Count Olaf shows up assuming different identities throughout the film, and they're trying to tell people in not like, when you watch a movie or something, you can tell where it's like, okay, the writer acknowledges that any sensible person would explain things clearly and immediately, and it would resolve the problem. So they're going to write the dialogue in this frustrating way where the characters, for some reason, are never able to, like, say the whole thing, or they're never able to, or they, for some reason, just don't explain it or something like that. And it's very frustrating as a viewer. In this film, they're like, that's Count Olaf. That is not the guy who he says he is. That is not who he says. That's Count Olaf, and he's trying to kill us, and he's assuming a different identity. And it's like, oh, okay. And then the adults are like, what are you talking about? That's not Count Olaf. And they're like, no, it's Count Olaf. He has these distinguishable features, but because of his talents in acting and costuming, he always finds a way to hide his identifiable features, like a tattoo or something like that. So it ends up putting them in a situation where no one believes them, and they have to now act on their own, which is frustrating, but it's frustrating in a way where it makes you want them to succeed, because you're also frustrated at the incompetence of the adults in their lives. This is, when I say that it's like Roald Dahl for like MCR kids. One of the other comparisons, like one of the commonalities, is that I always really liked about Roald Dahl books, is that in Roald Dahl books, the main characters were always children. But the children they're not like stupid. There's a very fine line where a lot of media will depict children as just kind of being like these dumb husks. Like these half-formed creatures. And if you've ever dealt with children, it might be very easy to think of them in that way. But really, children are just small adults. And in some ways, they can be a lot smarter and more perceptive than actual adults. And so the Baudelaires are always some of the most intelligent people in the room. Like Violet and Klaus are some of the most, well, I mean, Sunny is, she's just a baby. But Violet and Klaus are some of the most perceptive people who actually know what's going on, and they can put together intelligent thoughts and come up with things. And that, I think, inherently, because of their competence, makes them a lot more likable. You just like watching competent characters. And as a kid, reading stories about other children who are also very smart and competent is, like, cool. It's like, oh, that's fun. It's like a little fantasy for a kid. Like, what if I was in this situation? This is like a cool... it's like a way to write an admirable child character for children. And I like that a lot. Like, I think that a lot of kids enjoy that kind of thing, which is one of the reasons I feel Roald Dahl books, for instance, are so successful. Is because the kids, even if they aren't like, super geniuses or something, they're always very relatable. They're always very, they're typically, they act in ways that are, reasonably intelligent at the very least. And that is something else that Lemony Snicket is pretty good at tapping into. You want to see these kids succeed. You want to see them get into a nice home. And seeing them happy, like there's a few moments in this movie where they're genuinely happy and having a very sweet time. And it feels good. It's like, oh, this is kind of nice. I am happy for these characters. I don't know. Is there anything else I want to really talk about? It's a fun movie. It does kind of have, it's weird because it's structured in a strange way. Because it's almost like 3 episodes. So there's like a TV series that's on Netflix or something that I think it's not still ongoing, is it? Netflix. 3 seasons, 2017. Yeah, I could see that. Because the movie feels like it might have worked better as like a miniseries. It feels like it would have worked better as... I think there's like 13 books. If every book was adapted as, say, 2 40-minute episodes or something like that. 2 30-minute episodes. Like, let's just say an hour for each book. And then you just did like a 13-episode season. I think that might have actually worked better for the series as an adaptation. It kind of lends itself to that in an almost episodic way. And the movie feels like that. It feels like 3 or 4 episodes of a miniseries that have been stapled together. It never really hurts the pacing too badly because it's always hitting you with new stuff, right? They go to their second parent or the third home, right? The third new guardian, and they're always these very quirky, curious individuals. And because you've set the stage with Count Olaf, you're always a little bit on guard to see if this new person is also going to be malicious. Are they malicious or are they just weird? Do they want to kill the children or are they just strange? And so even when the movie is kind of like resetting itself with these new homes, it still remains, and it's still throwing enough interesting stuff at you that you're trying to figure, like, okay, you're trying to get it moves along pretty quickly. It's fairly condensed, and I think that helps the pacing. Because if they'd lingered a little bit too long, it could get like, okay, this is dragging a little bit much. But it's a pretty solid, like, okay, let's meet this new person. Let's find some new quirks about it. Let's have a scene or two of us interacting with them to build on the relationship a little bit, or maybe some extra details about them. Perhaps lay some mysteries or something, advance the overall plot. And then, oops, Count Olaf shows up, and now it's like the conflict is thrown into the equation, right? And that is a pretty solid formula that, because it only happens really twice, because there's only two other homes that they go to after Count Olaf, because they only really repeat it twice. I think it holds up. I think it holds up. Yeah, I don't know. I liked it a lot. I was curious as to whether or not, because again, I'd seen it, but it was so long ago that I was like, going into it, I was wondering whether or not it would hold up. Because I remember liking it as a kid. I was like, you have that, like, okay, is it actually good, or was it just a kid who like didn't really think about media or try to think about what I was watching? I'm happy to say that I think it actually does hold up. I think it's actually pretty neat. And it kind of makes me curious. It made Kat curious to go read She said she wanted to go read the book that she owned of it, and I don't know, maybe even the Netflix series would be something of interest to us, because I do remember really liking it, and I think it's a neat series. So yeah, that was a positive experience, a series of unfortunate events. Ironically, a positive experience. Let's talk about, I'm not going to spoil anything with a segue, but I do want to talk about some games that I played over the last week. So, you might have heard of a little game called Bat the Bitch You Bastard. Battlebit Remastered. That's the name. That's the official name. So Battlebit Remastered was a little project that was really started gaining steam around 2 months ago. With a bunch of news outlets, it just kind of exploded. Hey, again, talking about games that just a couple people made. This was a game made by 3 people that just completely exploded overnight. Bunch of articles written about it. Battlebit Remastered is essentially a game... Excuse me. It is a game in the style of Battlefield or other ones of those that sort of subgenre of mass battle, sort of sandbox multiplayer shooters, right? Primarily Battlefield is going to be the go-to example. It is essentially doing that, but with Roblox graphics. Like Roblox voxel graphics. And for most people, that's a huge turnoff because their art style whores and they need it to look realistic. Personally, for me, I really like that. I actually really like the idea of a game with, like, a shooter with voxel graphics is really cool. It's a cool idea to me. It reminds me a lot of a game called Ace of Spades, which unfortunately went down in 2018 that I never got the chance to play. Ace of Spades was like a multiplayer shooter mixed with some Minecraft elements where you could like remove and place blocks during the match and like open up walls and stuff like that and build things, and almost a precursor to Fortnite in a way, actually possibly even more extreme in the sense of like the sandbox sense. And I always thought that game looked really cool, but I never played it. So when I saw Battlebit, I was like, oh, something else, at least with that art style. Because that it doesn't retain any of those building elements. It's just the art style is reminiscent of that. And I thought the game actually looked really cool. I really like the art style. But I didn't buy it because it was like $15. And I was just, I don't want to spend $15 right now. I went on sale for like $10. And I got like a Patreon check, and it was like, okay, why don't I try it out? So it was an interesting experience going in, because what I heard about it was, you will love this game if you love Battlefield. If you like Battlefield, you'll love this game. Because it's just doing that, but with all the bullshit from the recent entries taken out. Highly stable, super fast matchmaking. And it's Battlefield gameplay. Battlefield type gameplay. Now, I have never played a Battlefield game. I found out from playing Battlebit Remastered, I guess I just hate Battlefield. Wow. I really wanted to like this game. I have not bounced off of a game this hard in a really, really long time. I'm struggling to remember the last time I picked up a game and within literally seconds of playing it was thinking about refunding it. So, okay. Let's start out. Yeah, I'm sorry. This is not going to be a podcast. This is a certified... Welcome to the hater section of the podcast. This is now where I'm just going to be sucking its dick because I have nostalgia for Battlefield. So... Okay, so Battlebit, you load in, and there's a lot of positive things about the game. Number one, very small install size, which might seem strange, but just... I don't know. I appreciate that. I think it's because it's so low res and so simple graphically. It makes it extremely lightweight. Never had any kind of lag issues. Servers very stable. Matchmaking almost instantaneous, like under 30 seconds to get into a match. All that stuff, I totally see the appeal. I load into a game. I don't know what's going on. I see a map. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm picking like where I'm going to spawn in. I click on a class. I just pick Assault because it seems like the most standard all-rounder. I'm not trying to go with anything zany. Let me just do the most basic kind of class to begin with. I spawn in. I drop in the spawn point. I take 3 steps, and I immediately feel nauseous. Oh my god. The head bob in this game, by default, is the craziest thing I've ever seen. I can count on one hand the number of games that have actually given me motion sickness. It would be Portal, The Unfinished Swan, Heretic, and this game. And now with all those other ones, Portal, I mean, obviously... You're zooming super fast and your gravity is completely flipping. Yeah, okay. Unfinished Swan, that game, that's actually a cool game. It's a cool puzzle game from like 2012, 2011, something like that. That's a game where like you paint in, you throw globs of paint. It's in first person. You throw globs of paint at the world. It's completely white, and you throw globs of paint to paint things in like mono colors. So which like gives them lighting and stuff like that, and it makes them defined objects, and that's how you like tell, so you like understand where you are. So that game kind of inherently messes with like your brain's orientation. Heretic, I think I just played at like a weird angle. I don't know what that was. I think I just was playing that game at a weird, like I was slouched a certain way, and it messed with my head or something like that. All of those are understandable in their own ways. Battlebit was literally taking 3 steps. The head bob was so absurd. It's like a fucking parody. It's like a parody of like stupid FPS decisions. Like, it makes me wonder if because you'll see stuff like this in other games or with like motion blur, and it makes me wonder if the developers of these games are like all wheelchair bound or something like that. Like, have they ever walked before? You know, I'm gonna say something totally crazy which they may not understand, but the human eye has actually evolved to be able to stabilize on a point pretty easily. I can do it without thinking at all. I am not constantly bobbing my head around and swinging like I'm at a metal concert, like I'm headbanging every step that I take. So I immediately went in, cranked that to fucking 0. And it still was there. Like, there's still some just built into the game, but significantly less to the point that it was playable. Like, I'm serious. I felt dizzy walking around in that game. What the fuck? So, okay, that's taken care of. Immediately, like, not a great foot to get off on with a game. But hey, I was like, alright, I want to be a little bit patient. It's not a style of game that I've played before. Maybe the options are just a little weird. Maybe I'm just not used to this sort of thing in this subgenre. Let me just be a little patient. So I started playing it, and I was actually trying to play the game and engage with the combat and the multiplayer and the deathmatch and all that. And it's like a capture the flag type game mode, but whatever. Here's my experience. I walk out. I died. Okay. Alright. Someone revived me. Alright. I take 2 steps. I died. I'm dead again. Alright. Let me respawn again. I walk out. I run around for a bit, looking in the vague direction of the objective, and then I die. Okay. Alright. It's a waste of time. I'm not going to continue the bit any further. It was a consistent cycle of me running around doing nothing and then dying. I never really got to engage in actual shooting with other people, which I thought was the point of a first-person shooter. It was kind of just it felt like a military sim with how brutal it was with the time to kill. Like, kind of ridiculous. It was just a continuous series of, oh, I'm dead. I'm dead? Okay. And not even understanding what happened or where I was shot from. Like, absolutely nothing. I just felt confused. I was doing nothing. I was bored. I was confused. And then we won or we lost after about 10 minutes. I played like 3 matches, and then I closed the game after 30 minutes. And I said, I am really thinking about refunding this. I have never refunded a game on Steam before. It's the first game, and it was like immediate. It was like an immediate feeling of like, I knew within that first like 5 minutes, oh man, I am not feeling this. But I stuck it out. Just to like, okay, maybe there's like a rough patch. Maybe I just have to get into it real quick. I'm willing to give a game more than 5 minutes of trying it out. And then it did not improve at all, and it was the same thing for the entire session. And then I closed the game, and I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning, and I thought, okay, you know what? Maybe I worked on the video. I got my work out of the way. It was the afternoon. I was done, and I was like, okay, maybe it was just because I was kind of tired last night. I just didn't have a lot of patience. I just wasn't feeling it. Let me try again. I loaded it up again. I said, okay, I've got 30 minutes on the game. Steam, you can refund if you've got under 2 hours. let me try. I set a timer on my phone, just in case. I set a timer on my phone. I was like, let me just try like another sitting. And if I start having fun, I won't refund it, right? I'll keep it around in my library. I played for 15 more minutes and then closed the game and sent a refund request. Because absolutely nothing had changed. My experience was the exact same. It was as unfun and boring as the first time. Wow. And it made me feel kind of insane. So I got my refund. I got my $10 back. It made me feel kind of insane. It made me feel like, what am I trying to remember? Was a thing where I just... Oh, that was a big stretch. What was the last thing where I was really confused as to why so many people were into it? I can't remember. But I was in that like... I genuinely could not understand how... And right even now, I do not understand what people find enjoyable about it. About that game? If it's like Battlefield, why do you guys like Battlefield? This is miserable. This sucks so much ass. And so I started really trying to look up like videos and I don't know, some kind of testimonials just to figure out why people like this game. Like, okay, maybe I just need to have someone explain it to me. Because I usually try to understand what people... I try to be empathetic, you know? I try to understand, you know, imagine myself if I was a different kind of player. Even if a game isn't appealing to me, I like to try to at least imagine what kind of an audience it would appeal to. I think that's like I don't know, healthy. It's just like a healthy bit of nuance to keep in mind because you know, I do a lot of talking about stuff, and I try to do that a lot, like in my videos and on this podcast. But it was so hard for me to even begin to understand what was appealing about it, and I looked up some videos. I watched there's an IGN review of it. Funny enough. And they don't really say... okay. It's weird, because, the review... I'm like, it makes sense as a review. The problem is that everyone who talks about the game already likes the base gameplay. To the point where it's almost taken as a given that they just like it. But I couldn't find anyone, and if you're listening right now and you like these kinds of games, I really am curious on a very basic fundamental level what you find fun about the gameplay loop of this style of a game, because it is on such a deep level 0 level with me. Absolutely, marrow level with me. Unappealing. Absolutely nothing was good. I don't like the fucking way... I hate the recoil on the guns. I get that that's a part of the genre. But man, I really don't like playing... It reminded me how much I dislike playing shooters with a fuck ton of recoil. I just find it annoying. I don't care about realistic guns in my video games. I care about the video game. That's not personally appealing to me. That's something that I can concede. I can see why someone might be interested in that. But it's not interesting to me, and it's not fun. It's anti-fun for me. I don't know, man. It's in the 21 Pilots camp of things that I cannot even begin to understand what people enjoy about it. I wonder if that made anyone upset. I wonder if saying that made anyone upset. Yeah, I don't know, man. Just the worst experience I've had with a game in a really long time. I have not been so thoroughly turned off of a game so quickly in forever. I just touched the controls and it felt like shit. hey, if you like it, oh, I don't know, I've heard, I don't know, what I could glean like things like people love the voice chat and like the proximity voice and stuff like that, and I immediately turned that shit off as soon as I got into a game and I heard some guy grumbling like, rah, 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 rah. I'm turning this fucking, I'm muting. I'm turning the volume down on all the voice chat stuff. Not appealing to me. And I watched, like, there's a video by, his name is, now it's Bricky. It used to be Bricky Orchid 8. But Bricky, I like his videos. He's now like he used to be a League of Legends YouTuber. And then he transitioned into a bunch of weird stuff when he quit League. He does like a lot of Warhammer videos now. He does, he made a video about Guilty Gear Strive, which I thought was fun. He makes a lot of videos, I don't know, just about kind of games and genres and stuff that he's into. With these sorts of, I don't know, sort of a Nakey Jakey kind of style video. It's his own thing, but that's how I would describe them. And he's talking about Battlebit. He made this glowing video review of it. There are a lot of things that he pointed out, like features and little mechanics, like, oh, how you can drop a magazine, or you can combine ammo from 2 different magazines and stuff like that. That I'm like, okay, I can see how that would be interesting to someone who likes this genre. Is this what it's like? Is this what it's like when someone who's not into fighting games hears me talk about, like, the combo structure or something that sounds completely fucking unimportant in a fighting game? That's the thing, is what this did is it gave me some helpful perspective. Because, wow, a very common argument for why fighting games are not as popular as, let's say, FPS games, is that, excuse me, is that fighting games are not intuitive and first-person shooters are, like, immediately understandable. It's always people who say things like, oh, you just jump in and you start shooting guys. And it's a completely, because that was not my experience at all. As someone who got into shooters as, like, after fighting games, that was not my experience. Getting into shooters was actually kind of rough at first. It just doesn't seem rough to you because you've been playing them for forever. So it seems intuitive in the same way that I can pick up most fighting games and it just kind of clicks. No, there's a lot of things about the experience, even in now having played a lot of shooters, that did not click for me with this particular game. And I can imagine that, but instead of being this one game, an entire genre, you can just extrapolate that kind of an experience that I had of, like, I don't know what's going on. I keep losing. I keep dying. I'm confused. It's not fun. I don't get what's happening. I feel like I'm not doing anything. That is not a thing that is unique to fighting games. It can happen in any genre. Difference is that fighting games fucking rule. Now I'm being biased. Yeah. I tried. Yeah, I tried. And I just couldn't. I'm sorry, fans of Bat the Bitch, you bastard, but just not a Taigen game. Actually, quite an anti-Taigen game, which is unfortunate. I really wanted to like it. I really did. I want a game like this that looks like this, with this kind of an art style, to just be fun, and it just wasn't. It was miserable. You know what wasn't miserable? Because I'm going to end this off on a high note. A little game I checked out called Tin Can. So Tin Can was a game that an acquaintance of mine in a Discord server got it as part of, like, a Humble Bundle. And they were like, hey, I don't want some of these. There's some games I don't want. Does anybody want the Steam keys? And I looked up. One of them was this little game called Tin Can. And I looked it up. I thought, hey, that looks neat. Shoot me the code, jabroni. So Tin Can is a little indie game by a studio called... What is their name? Show me the name. They're called Tin Can Studio. Very creative. I wonder what they make. Oh, it has a demo. That's neat. So Tin Can is a really cool game. It's basically a space escape pod engineer fixer simulator. That's not a good way to describe it. Here's the premise. You're an astronaut who was on board a space station when there was some kind of a cataclysmic accident, and you only have a minute to escape, grab a bunch of parts, a bunch of spare parts for your escape pod. You jump in the escape pod, and then your goal is to survive for however many minutes, as predetermined by whichever mission you choose, until you are rescued. So you have to keep your distress beacon alive until that time, and you got to hold out, and you got to survive. You do this by managing and fixing the various systems around your escape pod. Heads up, if you don't like games that put you in extremely stressful situations, this game is not for you. You're not going to have a good time with it. I wouldn't call it claustrophobic necessarily, because you have a decent amount of space to stand around in and move about. But it is definitely an enclosed space with a lot of things going on, a lot of systems. So the primary things that you have to worry about are your main life support systems, that being the oxygen, the carbon dioxide, the air pressure, the temperature control, the energy of the ship, the actual ship's battery, and then there's some other things around the ship that you can, around the pod, that you can fix, that you can use. There's like a little repair machine to repair parts. So that's the thing. So every single one of these, every single one of these systems, you can actually open it up, and it has all of these individual parts inside of it. You open up the oxygen pump, right? Or the oxygen, whatever, the oxygen systems. And it's like a drawer thing that you open up. It has a screen on the front which can read out like error codes. So if anything goes wrong, you have like an actual manual that you can check, that you can like pick up and then flip through to look through, like, okay, what does this error code mean? Okay, it's a problem with the pump. Then you open up the oxygen machine. There's all these different parts in it. There's like the pump, of course, but there's also connectors. There's like a spot for a battery if you want to run it off of battery power. There's pieces that I can't think of right now. There's all these different pieces, right? There's all these different parts. Electrical components and connectors and things like that. Even like the on-off switch is its own component that can be removed. All of these parts can be removed. So you're like, okay, I'm gonna take that out in one hand. I'm gonna replace it with another one from like a big cabinet that you have, or it's a series of cabinets, pull-out cabinets with spare parts in them. Then you you replace it in time so that you don't start dying from oxygen deprivation. And the whole game is just solving problems like that. It's constantly putting out fires, figuratively and sometimes literally. Fires are a thing that could start, and you have a fire extinguisher. The power can go out, meaning that like the lights will turn out. There's like backup lights. So you have to like run stuff off of battery power. Sometimes there's problems where there's like a part of the pod that you have like two canisters. One has like CO2 and the other one is oxygen, and it's like a converter. So you like, if a pump is empty of oxygen, you like put it in a little thing and it like refills it over time, and you gotta like manage all this different stuff. It is a very stressful game, and in many ways is full of trial and error. But what saves it from being frustrating, I think, really, or what saves it from... So I have a problem in general with trial and error gameplay, because it's just annoying for the most part, and it feels kind of like... In many cases, it feels like it just feels like a result of lazy design. Like, haha, what if you just had to guess? In this game, I think it works because the trial and error is it's a trial and error in the sense that there is a skill that you're building up. Every time you play, you are getting more and more familiar with the systems of the pod, with how they work, all the different components which you might need or not need. Each one of the missions has a predetermined, essentially, order of events, so you can actually train all these different missions. So there's like the 6-minute one is the first one you can do, and in that one the only thing you really need is to just replace the pump and the oxygen thing. That's all you really have to do. And then they gradually start stepping it up. I got to like the 3rd mission where you have to survive for 20 minutes, and there it's like a lot of stuff starts going wrong. There's a fire, the power goes out, you have to start replacing these things after, because like all these components get damaged from the fire. You have to start replacing stuff. The CO2 thing gets all these issues. So there's like things that you can plan for, and it becomes, okay, how do I fix this problem? What is diagnosing the problem? Because sometimes the error codes don't tell you the full story. It just gives you, like, in much the same way that troubleshooting a thing in real life can go, sometimes you get an error code and it doesn't necessarily tell you the specific thing that's wrong. It just tells you, hey, the pump is failing. And that could be for a number of reasons. It could be it's out of oxygen. It could be that it's damaged. It could be that the air filter, which is a separate component, isn't cleaned. It could be that it isn't getting enough power. All that the system can tell you is that the pump isn't doing what it has to do. It can't necessarily tell you why, unless sometimes there is another error code which will tell you about that specific component. But it's in these very specific ways where you won't always know. The error codes are chosen. The error codes that are there won't always give you the full story. You have to kind of figure it out yourself. So it's more of a skill and a machine, like a literal machine, that you're learning more and more, that you're getting more and more familiar with as you keep doing runs, and figuring out like little stuff. Like I can't get past the 20-minute one right now, but getting a little bit further and figuring out, like, okay, I'm gonna like, when this happens, like when the electrical storm happens, I'm gonna have like all these batteries ready. I'm gonna like quickly swap them out. I'm going to make sure that one is like charging. You're doing all this stuff, right? And you're gradually getting better and better at it. The game also has a sandbox mode, so you can like create your own scenarios. Like you can literally like control all these parameters and what different events can happen and stuff like that. Really cool little game. A little bit jank. I will say a little bit janky. I ran into some issues, particularly when I ran into, excuse me, I ran into some bugs, I guess you could call them, where some technical funny business, let's be nice, because I like this game, where during like this, at one point, the gravity went out, like the simulated gravity went out in the pod, which meant that you're just free floating. There's like little handlebars around the pod that you can like click to grab onto to help you, but I had to float upwards. The gravity went out, the lights went out, which meant that I had to use my flashlight, which has a limited battery that has to recharge on its own. And then and then a fire started in one of the systems, so I had to grab the fire extinguisher and then float up to the system, which you have to like pull out like a drawer. And like floating into that drawer, I think it was mainly the collision. The game usually doesn't have problems when you as just the player like runs into something, but I'm pretty sure the way it works is that when you pick up an object, the object still like exists in the game world. So like a lot of games will have sorts of like two separate layers, if that makes sense. Where if you were to view it in third person, you're holding an object. It's like a character holding an object, but that's kind of like purely cosmetic. This is why, for instance, in a game, in like a shooter, the character can be holding a gun at a certain height, but the bullets actually come out of a different height because that makes more sense for from the player's actual perspective, right? So the gun that you're seeing on your screen in the first person view is like a separate thing. It's a little smoke and mirrors technique. I'm pretty sure what this game does is that it actually has those elements, like they're literally being held in front of the player's face, like in front of the camera, which means that when you're doing zero gravity floating and you have momentum that you can't stop, and the fire extinguisher is contacting a surface, the game starts freaking the fuck out, and it starts banging all over the place back and forth, and like the frame rate is dropping, and it's like, oh god. Is this game early access? Is this early access? No, it is not. Is it? No, it isn't. But it could use a little bit of polish. I think what's there is good. What's it retail for? $20. It's a little steep. If it had a little more content, probably. Like, it's a really cool game. I think if it had a little more content, it would be worth it. I would say if you're going to go for it, maybe go for it on sale. I got it for free. So, you know, I can think of it in a much more, I don't have to think about the cost as much. I don't know if I'd spend $20 on it, but you can check out, there's a demo that you can play. I would highly recommend it. Very neat, cool game. I love it. It's it's kind of like it has simulator elements to it. It's not like a hardcore simulator, but there's a lot of realistic simulation going on in it, with, I guess, mildly unrealistic elements, like all the different. Maybe it is realistic, and I just don't know anything about space pods. But it's really fun. It is a really cool game. And with that, I think I'm gonna draw this to a close. Don't really have anything else to talk about, and I've also been talking for 2 hours. If you listened this far, thank you so much for listening to me ramble. If you have a question, please leave it down in the comments below, but feel free to leave it down in the comments below. Please phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. Starting work on a new video. It is going to be exciting, ? Yeah, that's what's going on. The work is being done. Anything else to say? Not really. Check out the other stuff that I do. Whatever. Bye.